Clara woke early that morning, sunlight streaming through the curtains and casting a warm glow over the nursery she had spent weeks preparing. Her hand rested instinctively on her swollen belly, feeling the gentle, reassuring kicks of the baby inside. Today was her routine checkup, a simple visit that should have been mundane, yet for Clara, it was anything but. Each appointment brought excitement and nervous anticipation, the chance to hear her baby's heartbeat, see the little limbs moving on the screen, and imagine the life that awaited them. She hummed a soft tune as she dressed, her thoughts dancing between hope and curiosity about what the doctor would say. Derek, her husband, entered the room moments later, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit as if he had just stepped out of a boardroom meeting. His presence was commanding, the aura of a powerful CEO surrounding him, yet his eyes softened as they met Clara's. "Ready for your appointment?" he asked, voice steady but gentle, betraying a rare moment of tenderness. Clara smiled, her excitement mirrored in her gaze. "I can't wait," she replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I want to see the baby, hear the heartbeat." Derek nodded, though his thoughts were partly elsewhere, already running through the day's schedule, meetings, and calls. Despite that, he took her hand, squeezing it lightly, a silent gesture of support. Clara appreciated it, even if she sensed the distance that sometimes lingered between them, a gap she hoped their baby would help bridge. Outside, news alerts flashed across phones and televisions. An ice storm was expected to hit the city later that day. Roads would become treacherous, travel hazardous. Clara noticed the warnings but felt a strange sense of optimism, convinced that with Derek driving, she would be safe. Her anticipation outweighed her fear, and she imagined a smooth drive, a routine visit, and a return home, blissfully unaware that the storm outside was only the beginning of a night that would test her strength in ways she had never imagined. Clara stood by the window, watching gray clouds gather and snowflakes begin to swirl, small at first, then heavier with each passing minute. Her heart tightened as she glanced at the news alert again. The ice storm was intensifying faster than predicted, and authorities warned people to stay off the roads. She turned to Derek, her voice quivering slightly, trying to mask the rising panic. "Derek, maybe we should wait, or go later. The roads are getting dangerous." He looked up from his tablet, fingers tapping impatiently against the screen. "Clara, it's just snow. The storm isn't going to stop us. I have meetings that can't be postponed, and your appointment can wait a few hours. We'll take it slow." Her hands clenched at her sides, anxiety bubbling over. "A few hours? Derek, I'm 7 months pregnant. What if something happens? What if I go into labor? You can't just ignore this." Her voice shook with frustration and fear, but he waved her concerns away, his tone clipped, businesslike. "I'm doing my job. You'll be fine. Just stay calm. Panic won't help." Clara felt the sting of betrayal in his words. He had always been a man of control, confident and decisive, but now his confidence felt like arrogance, dismissing her safety and her unborn child's well-being. Her chest tightened with a mix of fear and anger as she realized he wasn't considering the danger at all. She paced the room, biting back tears, glancing again at the window as snow piled up on the street below. The flakes swirled violently in the wind, painting a picture of chaos outside. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to get to safety, yet Derek remained unmoved, absorbed in his work. Clara felt trapped, terrified, ignored, and powerless, the warmth and security she had always associated with her husband now replaced by cold frustration and a creeping sense of dread. Clara gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands as the first sheets of icy rain pelted the windshield. The roads, once familiar and safe, were now slick with ice, glistening treacherously under the dim streetlights. Snow swirled sideways, carried by gusts of wind so strong that even through the car's heater, a chill seeped into her bones. The dashboard's GPS showed snarled traffic, roads closed, and detours she barely recognized. Panic rose in her chest, sharp and unrelenting, as the realization hit, Derek's insistence on driving now, ignoring warnings, had placed them in danger. "Derek!" Clara shouted over the roar of the storm, her voice tight with urgency. "We can't keep going like this. Look at the roads, it's impossible to see." He glanced up, irritation flickering across his face. Just keep calm. Drive slowly. It's nothing you can't handle. Her eyes widened, disbelief coloring her expression. Nothing I can't handle? Derek, I'm pregnant. The baby, we could both get hurt. He sighed, returning to the calls on his Bluetooth headset, dismissing her warnings as if she were overreacting. The wind howled, rattling the windows, and ice began to coat the windshield, reducing visibility to almost zero. Clara's heart pounded as she navigated cautiously, each turn and curve a gamble. She imagined slipping, crashing, and the catastrophic consequences for her unborn child. Fear clawed at her throat, squeezing every rational thought into desperation. Her mind raced through every possible escape, every plan to reach safety despite Derek's stubbornness. She clenched the steering wheel, her knuckles white, willing herself to remain composed even as the storm's fury intensified. Every mile became a battle against not just the weather, but against her husband's negligence. As the car inched forward, blocked streets and fallen trees loomed ahead, and the storm showed no mercy. Clara's resolve hardened. She could no longer rely on Derek, she had to take control, no matter the risk, no matter the cold or the blinding snow. The life of her baby, and her own, depended on it, and she refused to allow fear or her husband's arrogance to dictate the outcome. Clara's hands shook as she parked the car in the middle of the road, the tires crunching over ice and snow that had accumulated into a treacherous layer. She looked at Derek, whose face was a mixture of frustration and stubbornness, his fingers drumming impatiently against the steering wheel. "We'll wait here," he said dismissively, eyes glued to the GPS, pretending the storm outside didn't exist. "No, Derek. We can't just sit here. The roads are blocked, the ice is deadly, and the baby, I can't wait." Clara's voice cracked, but he didn't respond. The storm raged outside, biting at her cheeks, lashing her hair across her face. With a deep, shivering breath, she opened the car door. Cold air hit her like a wall, and snowflakes stung her skin, soaking her coat instantly. Her boots sank into the icy, uneven ground with each step. Every gust of wind threatened to knock her off balance, but she pressed on, determination fueling her every movement. She felt the baby shift and kicked back instinctively, her protective instinct mingling with fear. She clutched her belly, muttering words of reassurance both to herself and her unborn child. Derek yelled after her, frustration giving way to panic. "Clara! Get back in the car. It's too dangerous." But she ignored him. Every second she spent waiting in that vehicle felt like a gamble with their lives. She had no choice but to act. Snowflakes whipped against her face, blurring her vision, and the cold bit into her bones, but Clara pushed forward, each step an act of courage. Her breath came in ragged clouds as she made her way toward the dimly lit parking lot she spotted in the distance, the promise of shelter and help just ahead. With every step, she felt herself grow stronger, more resolute, willing to face the storm alone if it meant protecting her baby and ensuring they both survived. Clara stumbled into the small, nearly empty parking lot, the snow swirling around her like a blizzard in miniature. Her legs shook violently with exhaustion, each step heavier than the last. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, fogging in the icy air, and her coat, now soaked through, clung to her body, offering little warmth. The dim glow of the medical center's entrance was a beacon in the storm, but it felt impossibly far away, as though the wind itself conspired to slow her progress. A sharp pain tore through her abdomen, making her double over. She gasped, clutching her belly, her vision blurring with tears and the swirling snow. Contractions hit faster and harder than she expected, each wave of pain leaving her trembling, barely able to lift her feet. Her hands scraped against the icy asphalt as she tried to steady herself, the cold biting deep into her skin. Panic clawed at her chest. She had planned for a hospital birth, carefully timed, meticulously prepared. Nothing in her mind had prepared her for giving birth in a parking lot, surrounded by storm and ice. Her legs finally gave way, and she sank to the ground, snow sticking to her hair and coat. She pressed her body against the cold asphalt, trying to find even the smallest reprieve from the pain. Every contraction brought a sharp, desperate cry from her lips. She closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe, whispering to her baby, "Come on, we can do this. Stay with me, little one." Derek's voice, distant and muffled, reached her ears, but she ignored it. He had refused to help, refused to drive them safely to the hospital. Now, survival depended entirely on her courage and determination. Her body shivered violently, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her, but she refused to give in. One foot in front of the other, her hands bracing against the asphalt, she willed herself toward the center of the lot, the doors of the medical center looming closer, yet feeling painfully unreachable, as if the storm itself were testing her resolve to its limit. Clara's body convulsed with another excruciating contraction, the icy asphalt biting into her skin through her soaked coat. Her breaths came in sharp, desperate gasps, each one a battle against the pain and the numbing cold that threatened to overtake her. Snow swirled around her, sticking to her eyelashes and hair, mixing with the tears streaming down her face. Every instinct screamed at her to give up, to collapse into the white chaos surrounding her, but determination surged through her. She had to survive, for herself, for her baby. The next contraction hit harder, forcing her to her knees, clutching her belly with trembling hands. The sharp pangs radiated down her back and legs, a reminder of the life she was about to bring into the world under impossible circumstances. "You can do this, baby," she whispered through gritted teeth, teeth chattering violently from the cold. "We're almost there, stay with me." Her words were a fragile thread of hope, her voice breaking but unwavering in its love and determination. Time blurred as contractions came faster, each one more intense than the last. Clara's body shook uncontrollably, and she felt the first undeniable signs that the baby was ready to arrive. Panic mingled with exhilaration, fear of the cold, fear of injury, fear of what could go wrong, and yet a fierce resolve drove her onward. Her hands dug into the asphalt for leverage, snow melting beneath her palms from the warmth of her skin. And then, with a final, agonizing push, the baby emerged, slick and tiny, wailing into the freezing night. The sound pierced the storm, a fragile yet powerful announcement of life. Clara's tears mixed with snow, and a shiver ran through her entire body, but she felt a rush of overwhelming love and relief. She cradled the newborn against her chest, wrapping the baby in her coat as best she could, their cries mingling as a symphony of survival. The world around her, ice, wind, and chaos, seemed to fade for a moment, replaced by the bond between mother and child. Exhaustion weighed on her, but she could feel the steady warmth of her baby, the first heartbeats she had waited for, and in that fleeting instant, Clara knew that despite the storm, despite Derek's negligence, they had made it. Life had prevailed, fragile and miraculous, against every impossible obstacle. Clara's hands shook as she held the tiny, wailing bundle close to her chest, snowflakes melting against her wet hair and skin. Her body ached from the intense labor, the cold seeping into her bones, and her exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Then, through the blur of snow and wind, she noticed movement, headlights cutting through the storm and figures rushing toward her. Relief surged in her chest, mingling with the adrenaline that still kept her upright. A paramedic and a passerby, bundled against the cold, reached her within moments. "Ma'am. Are you okay?" "You've had the baby," the paramedic shouted over the wind, his voice steady but urgent. Clara could only nod, tears streaking her face as she struggled to focus. The paramedic knelt beside her, speaking in calm, professional tones that anchored her frazzled mind. "We've got you. Let's get you and the baby warm and safe." They carefully lifted the newborn from her arms, wrapping the tiny body in thick thermal blankets and pressing it against a heat pack. Clara's own coat was saturated and freezing, so the bystander draped an extra blanket around her shoulders, helping to shield her from the biting wind. The paramedic checked the baby's vital signs, murmuring reassurances. "Strong heartbeat, breathing well. You did an amazing job," he said. Clara felt her chest swell, both from relief and pride, as she realized her baby had survived the night's ordeal. Despite the chaos, the paramedic kept her focused, asking gentle questions and guiding her to sit on the pavement in a more protected area. He wrapped her legs in blankets, rubbed her arms to restore warmth, and monitored her closely, ensuring no complications from the birth or the freezing conditions. Clara clutched her newborn once more, feeling the soft weight and warmth against her chest. The storm raged around them, but for the first time in hours, she felt a fragile sense of safety, knowing that help had arrived and that both she and her baby were alive. Derek sat in the car, frozen in place as the storm raged around him. His fingers drummed helplessly on the steering wheel, eyes wide as he finally looked up and realized the chaos that had unfolded. He had dismissed Clara's fears, refused to act when the roads became treacherous, and now the consequences were undeniable. Panic gripped him, a tight, suffocating weight pressing down on his chest. Every passing second brought images of his wife struggling through the storm, snow piling on her soaked coat, her labored breaths, and then, most haunting of all, the thought of his child exposed to danger. "Clara," he shouted, voice cracking with desperation, but the wind swallowed his cries. His heart hammered violently as he fumbled with the car door, finally yanking it open. The icy blast of air hit him like a slap, and he stumbled through the snow, visibility almost zero. Trees bent under the storm, ice slicked the ground, and branches threatened to strike at every step. Every nerve screamed for him to hurry, but he was unprepared, panicked, and wholly unfit for the task at hand. In the distance, he saw Clara on the asphalt, wrapped in blankets with the paramedic hovering beside her, the tiny cries of the newborn cutting through the storm. Relief and guilt collided violently in his chest. Relief that she had survived. Guilt, sharper than any physical pain, that his arrogance and negligence had forced her to face this ordeal alone. His legs shook as he approached, realizing too late the enormity of what he had risked, what he had failed to protect. Clara, despite exhaustion and the icy blast around her, sat upright, holding her baby securely against her chest. Her eyes, bright and unwavering, met his. She radiated strength, a calm defiance born of survival and maternal instinct. Derek faltered under her gaze, his panic and guilt rendering him powerless. For the first time, he saw clearly the woman he had underestimated, someone who had braved freezing winds, snow, and labor, and emerged victorious, while he had cowered behind his arrogance, helpless and late. Every step he had taken to intervene now felt hollow, a bitter reminder that courage and resilience cannot be bought or commanded, only earned, and Clara had earned it in full, leaving Derek to face the harsh truth of his failures. Clara felt herself lifted gently into the warmth of the medical center, the sharp contrast between the icy storm outside and the heated interior overwhelming her senses. The paramedics moved swiftly, guiding her to a bed while another attended to her newborn, now bundled in fresh, clean blankets. The sterile scent of antiseptic and the soft hum of medical equipment provided an unexpected comfort, a sign that the nightmare of the parking lot was finally behind her. Her body ached in every joint, muscles trembling from exhaustion, but her spirit remained unbroken. Each breath she took was heavy but steady, a testament to the strength she had summoned to endure the birth and the storm. Nurses and doctors worked efficiently, checking vitals, monitoring both mother and child, and administering warmth and fluids to counteract the cold and fatigue. Clara's hands instinctively reached for her baby, gripping the tiny fingers as she whispered gentle reassurances. Despite the trauma, she felt an overwhelming sense of triumph. They had survived against impossible odds. The doctor smiled softly at her, a mix of admiration and relief. "You've been incredibly brave," he said. "Both you and your baby are stable now. You did an amazing job." Clara's lips curved into a weak but genuine smile, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. The words confirmed what she already knew: she had faced the storm, endured unimaginable pain, and protected her child through sheer determination and courage. Even as monitors beeped and nurses moved around her, Clara felt a deep sense of calm. The snowstorm outside still raged, but inside these walls, safety and life prevailed. She looked down at her baby's tiny face, soft and vulnerable, and felt the full weight of her survival. Every shiver, every agonizing contraction, every desperate step through the storm had led to this moment. She had emerged from chaos not just alive, but strong, resilient, and ready to face the challenges of motherhood with a newfound confidence that nothing, not even the worst of storms, could diminish. Derek paced the hospital corridor, his shoes scuffing against the polished floor, head hanging low as the reality of what had happened settled over him like a heavy fog. When Clara emerged from the room, holding the baby snug against her chest, her eyes met his, sharp and unflinching. She did not smile, she did not soften, the calm fury in her gaze said more than words ever could. "Derek," she began, her voice steady but laced with ice, "do you have any idea what you've done? Do you understand what could have happened out there?" Her grip on the baby tightened instinctively, a physical manifestation of the protective instincts that had kept her alive through the storm. "I was forced to give birth in a parking lot, in the middle of a blizzard, because you refused to take responsibility. You refused to act when my life and our child's life were at risk." Derek swallowed hard, shame tightening his throat. "Clara. I didn't realize. I didn't think," he stammered, but his words faltered under the weight of her gaze. "You didn't think," she interrupted, her tone rising, a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You didn't think about the fact that I'm carrying your child? You didn't think about me freezing in the snow, in pain, and alone while you sat in the car? Do you know what it feels like to fight for survival while the person who should protect you abandons you?" Derek's hands shook as he tried to reach for her, but Clara stepped back instinctively, placing the baby between them. "No. You don't get to fix this with words now. It's too late for apologies. You had your chance to act, to protect us, to be the husband and father you claimed to be, and you failed." His eyes filled with tears, the enormity of his negligence crashing over him. "I'm so sorry, Clara. I never imagined." Clara's jaw tightened. "Your regret doesn't change what happened. Your fear and panic came too late. I survived because I had to. Our baby survived because I refused to give up. And you will have to live with the knowledge that your arrogance nearly destroyed everything." She turned, walking away with the baby, her every step confident and resolute. Derek remained frozen, the weight of guilt pressing down on him, realizing that no amount of remorse could undo the terror he had caused, nor erase the strength and courage that Clara had shown in his absence. Clara sat in the quiet nursery, the soft hum of the baby monitor a comforting backdrop to the rhythmic breathing of her newborn. Cradling the child against her chest, she felt the warmth of tiny fingers curling around hers, a tangible reminder of everything she had fought for. The storm outside was a distant memory now, replaced by the gentle coos and sighs of her baby. She had faced unimaginable fear, braved freezing winds, and endured labor in the most perilous circumstances, and yet here she was, alive, unbroken, and fiercely protective. Her body ached, and exhaustion tugged at every muscle, but the physical pain was dwarfed by the strength she discovered within herself. Clara had realized that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She had taken control when no one else would, made life or death decisions, and brought her child safely into the world. The ordeal had stripped away fear born of reliance on others and replaced it with confidence forged in survival. As she gazed at the tiny face resting against her chest, Clara reflected on her independence. Derek's negligence had been a harsh lesson, but it had also awakened something vital in her, the knowledge that she could protect herself and her child without depending on anyone else. Each day forward, she would carry that empowerment, a quiet but unyielding force that would guide her through the challenges of motherhood. The nursery, once filled with anxious anticipation, now felt like a sanctuary, a space where love and resilience outweighed fear. Clara smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her baby's forehead. The storm had tested her, but it had also revealed her strength. She was a mother, a survivor, and a woman who had faced the impossible and emerged not just intact, but stronger than ever. In that moment, Clara knew she could endure anything, for herself, and for the tiny life she had brought into the world. Clara stepped out of the hospital days later, her newborn safely swaddled in warm blankets against the crisp winter air. Each step she took was deliberate, a declaration of her independence and the life she was determined to build for her child. The ordeal she had endured, the storm, the birth in a parking lot, Derek's negligence, had tested her in ways she never could have imagined, yet it had also forged a strength she now carried with quiet confidence. She no longer felt fear at the memory of that night. Instead, it reminded her of her resilience and the fierce protection she would always provide for her child. Derek, meanwhile, faced a very different reality. News of the storm, the parking lot birth, and his refusal to take responsibility had spread quickly, leaving him vulnerable to public scrutiny and social condemnation. Colleagues whispered in boardrooms, friends distanced themselves, and the press cast a relentless spotlight on his failures. Each day he confronted his guilt, shame gnawing at him as he realized that his arrogance and selfishness had nearly cost lives. Legal authorities, alerted by paramedics and hospital staff, questioned the decisions that led to Clara's peril, and Derek began to understand that wealth and influence could not shield him from accountability. For Clara, the contrast between her life and Derek's could not have been starker. She reveled in the warmth of her new home, surrounded by supportive friends and family, the laughter of her baby filling the rooms with light and hope. She embraced the responsibility and joy of motherhood, each moment affirming her capability and independence. Her experiences had hardened her resolve. She would protect her child at all costs, live courageously, and never allow fear or betrayal to dictate her path again. As the days passed and the snow melted into a hopeful spring, Clara understood that survival was more than endurance, it was triumph. She had faced betrayal, danger, and fear, yet emerged unbroken, stronger, and empowered. Every challenge had been a lesson, every tear a reminder of her strength. Her future was hers to shape, guided by love, resilience, and the unwavering promise that she and her child would flourish, a testament to courage prevailing over betrayal.